Should I? Hey, y'all want it, I'll get it to you.
Oh, God.
I got the white trash flowing right now, baby. Where my mullet at? I got my Miami going on with the gold chain and the hamburger meat.
You need the IROC Camaro parked next to you.
There we go. That's Dustin Miles' signature right there.
Thank you for watching the DDM podcast. We have another awesome lineup here. We have Dustin Miles, Garrett Denton, Troy Manners, and Alec Robbins, all Pro 2 drivers. And we're here at FD Atlanta, which was an extremely interesting Pro 2 round. So I'm excited to hear what these guys have in their opinions on the round. So let's just get started right off the bat. A quick, obviously, driver intro, guys. Quick 1 minute. You just say who you are, your car, real quick.
I'm Dustin Miles. I drive the S13 1J. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm Garrett Denton. I drive a CoreWorks Next and Tire S14 from Hope Valley, Rhode Island. Second year in Pro 2, 2JZ car.
I'm Troy Manners. I drive the orange and white S14.5. It's Neo Motorsport, PRL Motorsports, my two main sponsors. This is my second year in Pro 2.
I'm Alec Robbins. I drive the Dayton 1 Nissan 350Z. It's got a supercharged LS in it. And yeah, this will be my second full year of Pro 2. So
Cool. Awesome, guys. So first question I have, obviously we're going to talk about some of the weather conditions that happened this weekend. All of you guys did not get a dry qualifying run.
I did.
Oh, you did?
I got one. Yep.
Oh, well,
I
he's
got
lucky. He's lucky.
I saw some smoke coming from Garrett's tires.
That's that patchy wet.
That was coming from the engine.
Yeah.
No, but so obviously some huge changing conditions. You guys had no practice time in the wet. So going into qualifying and you see the rain coming down, what are the changes you guys are making to the car, and how does that change the track? Obviously having less grip, but what are some of the elements that you have to take into account? And we'll start with Dustin. What kind of changes did you do and stuff like that?
Honestly, I just really I don't have a lot of seat time in the car in the rain, and we had no practice time in it, so I didn't really have the ability to make a lot of changes. I mean, I loosened the car up a little bit with taking some compression out of the shocks, but yeah, I just had to send it on kind of what I was riding on, and it definitely didn't work out that well for me. So one of the things I'm gonna do over the off season is try and get to some events where it's raining and disconnect sway bars and play with tire pressure and all kind of fun stuff like that, so I can kind of see how the car feels and will react in the rain.
Yeah, we didn't change around too much with the car. We ended up dropping tire pressure, but that was really it. The rain here, it's weird because the track's on a hill, so the lower part of the track gets really slick, but up on the keyhole after, it starts to stop raining and not really dry out, but the top of the keyhole, because it's all on a hill, will start to dry out a lot faster. That caught me off guard in my first qualifying run. I was trying to get out of the keyhole, and the car straightened up, and I ended up getting a 0, which obviously that's when the nerves build for the second run. It's like, oh no, this is make it or break it. So the second run, I kept the car loaded up on boost the entire time and just kept dropping the clutch out and making sure that I could keep the tires spinning. But by the second run, kind of like Dustin was saying, the track had dried out just a little bit, so there was some tire smoke, a little bit of grip, but the patchy wet is probably the worst thing to try and drive on. So it was interesting, to say the least.
For me, I don't know. I've driven in the rain a decent bit, not in this car, but in other cars, and I don't know. It's kind of just one of those things where you gotta just predict how it's gonna be and take everything slower, I guess. After I watched like the 15 people in front of me fly into the sand trap, I was like, you need to slow down. But the first run wasn't bad. I actually had like a good run going, and then I kind of had a bobble coming down the hill. They still scored me. I think I got like a 66, and then coming out for my second one, it was super wet on the first one, and then the second one, it had actually dried up, and I followed a few cars behind Garrett, but when he went out, it was still kind of dry, and then it continued to rain and rain and rain, and like within a few cars, then it was pretty much total wet again. But on the second one, I laid down a pretty consistent line and ended up getting, I think, a 77, which put me back in the show because I was on the bubble with the first one. But ended up getting in 11th place, so all in all, the rain wasn't too bad for me. So.
Yeah, as far as car setup, we really didn't do much either. We wanted to kind of keep everything predictable, and I don't have really any seat time in the car with the rain, so we didn't want to make any major changes that might throw things off and really mess with it. But we were lucky and we got our first run in the dry, and we threw down a good run, so we were pretty much in the top 16 with that run. And but yeah, the track was, even on our second run, it was super patchy, and coming down the hill I think was the worst part, because on initiation everyone's dragging handbrake, so it lays a lot of rubber down right there, and then when that gets wet, it's like ice basically going into that first corner. So and the run up isn't as slick because there's not a bunch of rubber laid down, so like coming out of the start it feels decent, and then right when you initiate, it's just you keep going, you don't slow down going into the first corner. So I think that's what kind of was throwing a lot of the Pro 2 guys off, was you weren't expecting it to be that slick.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like slow motion watching you guys go down the hill.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So on your sight lap, what's the goal in the sight lap for you guys when you go out and drive? Like, what are you trying to find when you go do a sight lap before your qualifying run?
Basically the sight lap for me this year, because since it was basically the first one I've ever done, I was trying to fill out the track and see where it was dry, where it was wet. My second qualifying run, I think I spun twice. I might have 360'd up the hill, I don't even remember. And then it was really nerve-wracking because I knew, oh well, I'm sitting on a 0 already. If I don't go out and put this together, I'm definitely not getting in. And then I was able to go out in my second run and at least put a score on the board. It was just only good enough for like 17. So.
Yeah, I think when we do a sight lap, it's a lot of the same, like what Dustin said. You're trying to find like the really slick spots of the track versus the drier, more grippy spots of the track. Because it's weird, even though the track might be completely wet, there's spots that are definitely way more slick than others. So you got to be able to know where to put the car on your main lap, just by getting through the track on your sight lap and just kind of feeling it out. So that's really the big thing about it.
Well, my second run, I tried to almost treat the sight lap like a qualifying lap and just try and at the same time figure out where the dry and the wet and figure out what I needed to do there. But the sight lap was like spot on, so I was like, well, I guess I'll just do the same thing for the qualifying lap. And I laid down actually like 2 almost identical laps between the sight lap and the qualifying lap. That was good enough to get us in the show. So.
Yeah, basically what they said, just looking for the wet spots, figuring out where, and especially on transitions, they like to, it's kind of weird, sometimes they'll grip up when you straighten out between the transitions. So trying to figure that out, and I wasn't sure what gear I was going to run because it was so much slower, so I wasn't sure if I was going to run the whole track in second gear or do third. But we just kept the wheel speed way up like we were doing in the dry, and it seemed to work good.
So in the driver's meeting, what did the judges tell you that they're kind of looking for, and like say someone's like trying to get into competition and stuff like that, like what are the things that judges tell you that you think would help other drivers going into competition and stuff like that?
Well, one of the big things they've said, I guess going back to Orlando, is that basically we all have a lot of grip out in our cars, and it's kind of like making tandems not as well as they potentially could be if we all just dial back a hair and we're more comfortable in our setups and everyone's setup being more alike. So it'd be they basically, all they really care about is good tandems. They don't want to see you trying to run away from anyone. They don't care how fast you are. It's not a judge criteria anymore. So it's basically just putting on a good show for the fans and giving everybody what they came to see, close, cool battles.
Yeah, the judges, like a lot of the time they'll touch on things like, kind of give you advice, like Dustin was saying, loosen your cars up, it'll make them easier to drive. But most of the time in drivers meetings, they show you like a track map with all the clipping points, and they tell you what zones they want you to really fill, which ones they're really looking at, and what they're really looking for as far as your commitment and fluidity throughout the run. And they explain like the same, your lead driver job and your chase driver job, like what you need to do, and then the not sacrifices, it's like the compromises that you can take as a lead driver or a chase driver to either get closer or something like that.
For example, staying on the inside of the outside clip of the top of the keyhole, like staying in the inside line for the follow driver.
That would be so that'd be like a compromise for the follow driver, is to like miss that second outer zone to kind of dive in to get closer to the lead car. And they're going to dock you a little bit for it, but ultimately they want to see you do that so you can keep a close tandem. So like that's a lot of the stuff that they go through in the drivers' meetings, is telling you like what zones they expect you to be in and what zones they expect you to like completely fill.
Yeah, I think like especially this year, it seems like they're a lot more focused on like I guess just more of the lead run and laying down the 100-point qualifying run, because they kind of stress to have a good lead you have to have a good chase, you have to have a good lead. So they really want you to, back to what Dustin said about them wanting to free up our cars, they want to see you really fill all the zones and really get in everywhere they want. I mean, sometimes it feels like a really good run, but if you're not right on, they're very strict on their zones and how they want everything done. So to get full points, you better be like on a very, very strict, perfect line. But like on to what Garrett said, like they really just, as far as like the tandem meetings go, is tell us like what we're allowed to compromise to make good tandems. And as a lead driver, back to the just trying to run a perfect line and things like that. Track to track, the meetings are pretty similar, really. Like it's always the same, just different track map, but same goals and everything. It definitely has changed from last year to this year on their criteria and how they're judging, but other than that, the meetings are always usually pretty similar.
Yeah, I think they pretty much touched on all of it, and it's just kind of specifics of each track and what they're kind of looking for specific to that track and things like that.
So what's the big changes for judging this year as compared to last year?
They moved to sector scoring now, so every section of the track has a certain amount of points allotted to it. I think that's why you're seeing like in Pro 1 the really high scores a lot. But with sector scoring too, like they've told us before, like a mistake in one sector could also dock you in another sector just because of how it's done. I feel like the judging has been a little more consistent this year in the qualifying scores and stuff. Like I can kind of relate to them more. Like last year it seemed like you'd get some that were real high and some that were real low, and it's kind of hard to understand. But
yeah, I think once we all get used to it, it'll be a little easier. At first it was like in Orlando, it was kind of hard to understand what was happening kind of with the judging, because you'd see what you thought was a good run, and just because it was consistent the whole run, they might have been off a little bit in like a whole sector, and it would really ding you on the score. And so
Gotcha. Yeah, so this is a kind of an interesting topic that's I guess somewhat relevant for now. There's a bunch of organizations putting on like these single day events to get their Pro 2 licenses, like big bashes and whatnot. And then there's obviously you have like East 10 that does like a 4-round series, and a bunch of others that do that as well. Do you think obviously there's room for those single events to get those Pro 2 drivers in? Because obviously we have plenty of Pro 2 drivers to fill the field that we have. And there's a lot of good ones, I would say that. But there's definitely mixes of like levels of driving as well in the Pro 2 field as well. So do you think having these one-day events is helping Pro 2, or do you think it's kind of, I guess, mixing the quality a little bit too much, or like creating too much of a gap?
Personally, I think the shootouts have their place, especially on the East Coast, because within the last 3 years, Proam series have struggled to fill the roster. They've struggled to have a full list. Like when I earned my license at SDU, only 4 drivers showed up. So when you're having that, it basically forces the organizations to find some method to make this work from both sides. Like you can't expect organizations to come out year after year and just lose money. If it's like marketing, the supply and demand. When the supply is too low, the demand is too high, whatever, yada yada yada. You know what I mean? Like, there's not enough drivers. They're not going to have as many events. So by shorting the season down into one event, it gives people enough time to save money for their programs, to get out there and compete, and then also have money to do other events where they still get their seat time in, and still get comfortable in their car, still get a lot of tandem time in. They can have the choice to run the shootout and do a 4-round Pro-Am if they want. Whereas if you try and do multiple Pro-Am rounds or Pro-Am seasons at once, it's really hard. They might overlap, they spread out too far, they might be one weekend after the other, and you have car problems. I mean, you still have to have the same amount of preparation going into one big event or 4 small events, and basically you get to lose a third of your budget on tires, because you're only going to be able to bring out 30 tires at one event. You might get your license, whereas on a 4-round event series you're going to be buying 80 tires. That's a big money savings right there, on top of travel. Like, you can use it to your advantage, but also don't let it knock your seat time down. Like, if you want to do the shootout and you earn your license, you need to get out there and drive to be prepared to come out here and run with everybody in Pro 2. Like, the gap is still pretty big from Pro-Am to Pro 2, and it's even bigger from Pro 2 to Pro 1. So we all just have to keep working on ourselves as drivers and progressing our skills.
See, I agree with certain aspects of what Dustin said, but I feel like I have the unpopular opinion. I don't think single round shootout series should ever be a thing. First off, I don't think it teaches the logistics that you need to be able to know in order to come into Pro 2. Like, just traveling from round to round is one of the biggest expenses of Pro 2. Not even the car, forget about the car. It's the travel, making sure your rig is going to make it from, like, let's say you're in, Pacific Northwest all the way to Florida, or East Coast all the way out to California. Like, you got to make sure that everything is on, and I feel like it takes going through a 4-round series and kind of doing some traveling in order to, like, kind of get an understanding of that. And then I guess to touch on a couple of things that Dustin said, if you don't want to do a 4-round series because you can't afford tires for 4 rounds, you're not going to be able to afford Pro 2. That's flat out. If you're not showing up to your Pro-Am because other people have more built cars that you can't compete with, you're not going to be able to afford to build a Pro 2 car. I think you need a 4-round series in order to go out, teach yourself the logistics, teach yourself, how to drive with different drivers and at a competitive level. Doing your 1-round shootout isn't, you can do, even if you get through a certain amount of battles, you're going to drive with a certain amount of people, but if you do 4 rounds, you're consistently driving with multiple people and getting that tandem experience in the qualifying and understanding what judges are looking for. And there's a whole lot more that goes into it that I think you can't learn in 1 round.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Garrett said. I think that if, like, we're touching on what Dustin said with the event organizations not really being able to afford to do a full series, if that's the case, then I think even if it requires help from Formula D themselves, I think that the shootouts are cool and every area gets their own shootout, but they should have a points race between the shootouts, and you should have to run more than one shootout. Like, we'll have one, down south, one up north, Midwest, maybe Texas. Like, have to cover the logistics of, like, what he was saying. Like, doing 1 round does not even come close to comparing to a full season of Pro 2. Like, even like he said, on travel and everything, like, yeah, the car is expensive, yeah, the tires are expensive and all that stuff, but just everyday expenses for you and your crew to eat and to stay somewhere and, like, not live like complete gypsies. I don't know how some people do it, but I try and, like, I have my guys, like, taking off work and coming to all this stuff. Like, I have to feed them and I have to give them somewhere to sleep. Like, I don't expect them to sleep in a truck or something. So I mean, all that adds up extremely fast when you're on the road. So I mean, a 1 weekend deal of, like, having 2 days in a hotel versus a Pro 2 round, you're going to have a minimum. I mean, especially if you stay on Saturday and watch the Pro 1 event and do all that stuff, you minimum of 4 nights in a hotel. You know, that's anymore. That's $600 to $800 right there. So it definitely doesn't prepare you just to do one event and get a license. And I think also that they should cut the amount of licenses down and, you know, make people work harder for them too. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think they're on the right track with, you know, the logistics. It really doesn't prepare you for the travel and preparing your car to just having a reliable, consistent car that's going to work at multiple different tracks as well. You know, you get a shootout and you get some people who have driven a whole bunch of one track, and, you know, some people are really good at like oval tracks and banks and things like that. And then they come to a road course and they don't know what to do. And so yeah, I think that the traveling really helps prepare drivers a little bit better and doing the full series. But then again, I mean, I don't think I've seen any bad drivers come from a shootout, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think for the average driver, I think it's a good idea to do a series before trying to run straight to Pro 2 after just doing a one event shootout, you know. But
yeah, it's such an interesting question because it's not just the driver side of it too. You got to think the organizational side of it too. Like making money on like a multi-event series is seeming to become more and more difficult, at least like from organizational standpoint. And so that's why when they put these events all in one, it's a lot easier to be able to make some money off of doing drifting as well.
The other point I have based off that though is like if your drivers aren't showing up to all 4 rounds because they can't do the logistics or do the whatever, but they'll show up to 1 round and get their Pro 2 license and try and come into Pro 2, a lot of those drivers are going to be wasting our practice time because they're not going to be prepared. They're going to show up to 2 or 3 rounds, not qualify, and then not show up again after that.
Yeah.
And that'll be the end of them. They'll come in and burn out a Pro 2 that fast because they're not prepared. And that's why, you know, I completely disagree with the whole single round deal.
I still think drivers can do that either way, especially if you blow all your money that you have allocated for competitive drifting and Pro-Am. It's just going to make Pro 2 an even more of a struggle. Like if you can save that little bit of money on travel and tires and put that towards your Pro 2 program, I feel like it'll give us more quality drivers out here, in my opinion, just to kind of play the devil's advocate in the group. Like, you know, you save the money on travel, but you can still drive your local events and get a ton of seat time. You can still be just as prepared, but you just have to go in with the mindset that, hey, I need to maybe even get out and help a Pro 2 team before I, you know, volunteer to help out a Pro 2 team to come out here and to get an idea of what goes on in the pits, because I can tell you it's completely different than Pro-Am. Pro-Am is way more relaxed, you get way more practice time, you get way more seat time. In Pro 2, you're coming out here, you're lucky if you get 6 laps in practice, like really lucky, especially in a road Atlanta. I got 4 this weekend, I think. Maybe, I think we all might have got 4 laps at all. And then I only got 6 laps total. I mean, it's 8 if you count the sight laps, but those didn't really count. But, you know, you just need to know, familiarize yourself. If you're planning on coming to Pro 2 and you want to do the shootout that way, you just need to take the action to prepare yourself. You can't just go to the shootout, win your license, and think you're just going to stroll into Pro 2 and do well. You need to take the necessary steps to build your program and to get ready, you know?
I can agree with that. As long as you know what you're getting into.
What are some of the differences you see in Pro-Am and Pro 2, like out here, like as like crewing and being like, so like what go into more into like the differences you saw in between Pro 2 and Pro-Am, like the crew and the elements and stuff like that?
I mean, well, for me, there's a lot more going on out here. There's, you know, Pro 1 going on. There's Pro 2. There's Global Time Attack at some tracks. There's other events going on. So the schedule is way more tight. In Pro-Am, it's relaxed. You kind of, you know, you just go out and practice. And then sometimes in Pro-Am, you might only have 20 drivers, you know? And so you get plenty of seat time. But out here, you know, there's 40-plus drivers. So you're going to have to be prepared, be on track. You need to have, you know, all your spare parts, because when stuff comes up and you break something, you got to be able to fix it right on track especially the one big thing that's really different from Pro-Am to Pro 2 is hot pits. You know, you have to be prepared to be able to move all your stuff from your pits to the hot pits and have everything that you need there, because if you have to come back to the pits, your practice is pretty much over. We only get maybe an hour and a half of practice sessions, or maybe 2 hours at once. But if you have to come back to the pits, it takes you 30 minutes, and you got 15 minutes getting there and back. You know, there's your whole hour. You get in line, you might get one lap. You know, you have to be prepared. That's one of the biggest differences from Pro-Am to Pro 2. I don't remember in Pro-Am ever having hot pits, except at Hyperfest, which was the shootout, and I didn't even use it because my truck was stuck. So.
I agree with a lot of what Dustin said. It's a lot tighter of a schedule. You know, you need to be prepared ahead of time. Not like, oh yeah, it's coming up in an hour. No, if it's coming up in an hour, you need to be ready now. You know, your truck needs to be on grid now. Your car needs to be on grid now. And 30 minutes before your practice session starts, you need to be putting your car in line so you're at the front of the line, not, oh, practice is starting, now I'm going to go get in line, and I'm like 30th in line now.
Yeah, and it's like a 45-minute wait just to get from the back of the line.
And it kind of happened to us in tandem practice before comp. You never know what's going to happen. You know, people might spin out, hit each other, blow it off into the dirt. Then they got to clean the track up. I think me and Jeff Donati were supposed to do a tandem practice right before competition, and we sat there for about 20 minutes while they tried to pull someone out of the dirt, and they ended up just calling practice, and we got literally one lap of tandem practice in. That was it, because somebody put it in the dirt and killed 20 minutes of an hour-long session. So, and it gets super frustrating. So that all adds to being prepared and being on time. You know, if you're not, there's a chance you might not get any practice. So.
It's been a long time since I ran Pro-Am, actually, because I kind of went a different approach to things. The last year I ran Pro-Am was like 2015, so it's been quite a long time. I went from Pro-Am here, and then I went to Pro in Canada, and I ran Formula Drift Canada and DMCC and those series up there. Pro-Am was a lot different when I ran Pro-Am back then. Like I got my license, my first Formula D license in 2013. And that season, like, the field was completely stacked in U.S. Drift. I think the 4 that got licenses that year was Jeff Stonebeck won, James Evans got 2nd, I got 3rd, and then Dan Savage got 4th. And there was just a list of like really, really, really good drivers. And there was never any shortage of guys. There was always way more than a full field. So I really don't have much of an opinion on how the Pro-Am thing is nowadays. Like, I've never had to do the shootout thing or anything like that. But going from Canada to here, Canada was like more strict than Pro-Am. It was still a pro event, but they were a little more lax on schedule and things like that versus this. But like they said, everything is like, you have to be on time. Like, you have to be, a half hour, 45 minutes ahead before practice. Like, have everything ready, be up there and be ready to go, because everything's a time crunch, and especially when you have 40 guys, and like he said, one guy goes in the sand trap, there goes 5 other people's runs in that practice session. So you got to use every minute you can and be on time, and don't waste any time at all, because and if you get 6 runs in a weekend and you're 10 minutes late to practice, there goes one of your 6 runs. So everything's definitely a time crunch here, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely time crunch, and you gotta, out here it's a lot more professional. You gotta, have your driver's suit on, be at the drivers' meetings, and like they said, earlier to practice, stuff like that. It doesn't take much to lose a run. You got anything wrong with your car, something comes up. Usually even in practice right now, we're changing tires in line. We're not even going back to the hot pit. So yeah, it's just go, go, go when you're out there. And yeah, Pro-Am was definitely a lot more relaxed than this, but
interesting.
I have one more point I want to touch on in this topic, basically, is one of the other biggest hurdles that you'll go through and not necessarily think about being prepared for is having your crew all up to speed. Like, taking time to maybe even have like a mock setup day where you just pull the trailer up in a parking lot, pull the car out, set everything up, set the truck up, everything, so that everyone has a job, knows what they're doing. Because when you try and come out here and do it, it's really hectic. I know as a driver, I get a little moody and I start yelling and I get mad and I get frustrated. I shut down, and then I'm doing it all by myself. So, and it's not my crew's fault. That's something I'm definitely have to work on as just a person. But it happens, you know, and it's one of those things that maybe doing a shootout could help and potentially not prepare you for, because you just show up with your two buddies that are going to change your tires, and you know, you don't really prepare yourself that way. But the biggest thing in getting prepared from Pro-Am to Pro 2 is making sure your crew knows exactly what's going on. They know your car and know where everything needs to be, from the trailer to the pit to the hot pit.
So what's the minimum number of crew members you think you would need to come out here?
Probably 3. 2 in the hot pits, maybe 1 in the hot pits if you really want to do it that way, and then a spotter. Like, obviously it's better to have more people if you can organize that and get it situated. A lot of the times when I have more people, I feel like everyone's just conversating too much, standing around. So I kind of drop back to only like 2 people in the hot pits and then 1 person up top, just to kind of, you know, save a little cost for myself, because it costs a lot of money when you got to put up 6 to 8 people and you got to feed 6 to 8 people, and you know, you got to do all this stuff. It's hard to get to the track and from the track with that many people. So, you know, 3 to 4 people should do you good, but you know, you just got to make sure that everybody's up to speed and everybody knows their job and knows the car.
Yeah, I mean, like, he pretty much covered it, but I would say 3 is about minimum. That's how many I have. Like, you know, 1 spotter. Because your spotter is your spotter. He can't come help. Like, especially here, like you're talking a mile in between. Yeah. So, but in the hot pit, another thing, like he said about them knowing the car, because like, you know, once you like get belted in, like put all your safety stuff on, and something breaks, like you can't just hop out and help. Like they have to be able to fix and do whatever needs done on the hot pit. So.
Or especially in a 5-minute call.
Yeah, especially.
You know, if you got to make a 5-minute call, they got to know what to do, because you can't get out and do everything and then be able to get back in and get all belted and suited up and strapped in.
Right. Yeah, we usually have 4 people. That way we've got 2 on grid, and then my wife is my spotter. And then we have 1 extra person, since it is so far to run back and forth, if we need parts out of the trailer, if we need anything.
Yeah, that's a very good
then we got
point
1 person to run back and forth.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because you got quite a few people too, don't you?
Now let's hear about Garrett's
opinion
on the subject. You got about 10 crew members out here every day.
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, drifting is, you know, a family, kind of a family event. You know, everyone comes out, everyone wants to help. My crew chief is my cousin, and you know, my crew is made up of, you know, my family and then my best friends from college that I know I can trust to work on these things. You know, they have 240s, you know, they do all this stuff on their own cars, so I can trust them to come out and do it on this car. You know, my cousin didn't have much of a background in drifting before, but he's a super sharp dude. So, I mean, anything, I can point to it once and tell him how it works, and he's got it down. And, you know, and I can trust that out on grid, he's going to be the guy to, like, hold everything down. If we need to call a 5-minute, that's annoying. But if we have to call a 5-minute, I can trust that he's the guy that's going to be able to, you know, get everyone together, tell them what they have to do, and get everything done. But it's nice having the extra people because, you know, kind of like you were saying, if we need something from the trailer that we might have forgotten or didn't bring up to the hot pits, we have somebody that can run back and grab it. You know, we constantly were on the radio in Orlando. That was, you know, the hot pits were way closer to the trailers. We were constantly running back and forth and radioing back and forth. Hey, we need this, look for this, bring this out. And that's where it really helps having the extra people. You know, we have a guy that stays at the trailer. He can find the parts, have somebody run back and just grab them and bring them back up. So it's, you know, it speeds up the whole process.
Yeah. Or even we've had to have people run to the parts store and stuff too. Like if you're out in a practice and you've got a belt go bad, or something dumb like that you don't have a spare part for some reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, you gotta have someone run quick. And
Part story, yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, well, cool. Anything else you guys kind of have any ideas that popped into your head that were kind of interesting? Or, I mean, you guys all had some pretty crazy weekends, I mean, but all of your cars are running except for Garrett's.
Yeah, so, I don't know. You might have heard that when they were cranking it over there. She has 0 compression.
Uh-oh.
At least you got a spare. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Be prepared with spare parts. You need
Spare
to have
everything.
spares. Every suspension part, every wearable component, wheel bearings, tie rods, even
Engines.
spare front wheels, engines. I still have to make the big purchase and get a spare transmission and quick change one day, but those things you got to save up for, and that's why you buy quality parts, so that you can hopefully stretch your way through a season on certain things. But definitely every wearable part is in arms, everything like that.
Axles are a huge one.
100%.
Wheel bearings,
Wheel
hubs.
bearings, hubs, yep, just like that. All that. Make sure you're prepared. If you come out here and the smallest thing fails and you're out for the weekend, it's horrible. You spend all that money to get here, and
to go out on a
that
$50
stuff happens.
part that you should have had.
Yeah, and even if you check your car over 100 times in the shop, something else will break when you get here. It doesn't matter,
Yep.
That's just the luck of the draw right there. That's just how it is.
I mean, you guys are pushing cars to the limits that normal people don't push cars like this. And I think that's the biggest thing in drifting, because I mean, the percentage of cars that break during an event is incredibly high. And I feel like it's a lot higher than most of these other motorsports. People are always underneath these cars, whether it's Pro 2, and you guys are just pushing so much power and grip into these cars. And then also the tracks. I mean, you talk about the rumble strips. I mean, how many guys destroyed things on the rumble strips this weekend, I think Chelsea Denofa destroyed his diff or something on one of the rumble strips. And so it's like...
I'm 50-50 grinding them somehow. I don't know what it is. Lowest car out here and made it through somehow. Maybe not the lowest, the one up the lowest.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. I mean, it's
come
nuts.
on now, get out of here, monster truck.
Killing me. I'm stalking over here.
At least you got a cooler livery than me this year.
Yeah.
give you that.
But no, it's like it's nuts to see how much people break things out here. So I mean, like you
we're
said,
not easy on the cars, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things too is you see people standing around in their pit like when things aren't broke. Like my guys, like every time we get a break, like we go over the entire car, like put a wrench on stuff, and I can't tell you how many times like we've caught something that would have been like real bad, or like possibly even caused a crash by just putting a wrench on things and like double checking stuff. Like checking hoses, like make sure nothing's getting hot, make sure nothing's rubbing, like just preventative stuff like that will save you a lot of headaches.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks guys for taking your time out of the day and talking with me. Again, this is the DDM podcast. You guys want a quick social media shout on where they can find you guys all at?
On Instagram, dmiles_GMP, and Facebook, Miles Style Racing.
Facebook and Instagram, Denton Motorsport. Remember, no S at the end.
Instagram's at Troy Manners 109 and Facebook's just Troy Manners.
And I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Alec Robbins Racing.
Cool guys, thanks for watching, and be sure to see you for the next one.